India has recently increased gasoline prices due to higher international crude prices and a fall in the local currency's value. Joining me on the line is Mike Schussler, economist and director of Economist.co.za. Hello, Mike. How do you think the increase of gasoline prices will affect India's economy?
I think, on its own, it wouldn't have been a major problem. It is only about 3 or 4% increase. 1.4 rupees is only about 3 US cents. But the problem in India, as in many other emerging market countries, is that the oil price has been going up continuously. And furthermore, in India, there's been a lot of subsidization of oil in the past. So they have a long history of relatively low fuel and gasoline prices, which is now starting to come through where they cannot afford it anymore, and they have therefore increased the price to just over 70 rupees, which I think is also a psychological level. And I think in that sense, in the continuous increase of prices in India on the fuel price, that's where it will affect the economy. This single price in itself won't actually affect the economy that much. But the problem is, it's not this 3%, it's the other 10, 15, 20% before that has risen, that the gasoline prices have risen, will make it difficult for the Indian economy, and it will probably damper consumer spend quite a bit.
Rising gasoline prices are not just a problem in India. Which other emerging market countries have this problem, and how can it be resolved?
Well, I think most emerging market countries have this problem at the moment, and specifically those that have large inland areas which are not serviced well by either rail or waterways, such as where I live in South Africa, Namibia, Zambia. So large parts of Africa, I would suggest it's also India's problem. It's probably a problem in some Latin American countries where the goods go by road more so than by rail or by river. And that increases the price of goods, and the knock-on effect in the economy is therefore not just on the motorist, but also just on the normal consumer in what they buy. And I suspect that we are in an era where these high prices are playing a huge role, and specifically I would say those that are dependent on Middle Eastern oil, where oil prices have really risen more so than North American or Brent oil, where there's now a political premium on Middle Eastern oil.
Why are emerging market countries so reliant on fuel?
First of all, oil is the biggest commodity in the modern era. It is a commodity that is used the most, and it's a day-to-day commodity. It gets used in transportation, it gets used in products from lamp oil to paints to margarine. Everywhere there's a lot of oil in the process, and this is probably the biggest commodity that the world's ever known. That's how well spread it is, and everybody always knows more or less what their fuel price is because they can see it every time they fill up, and it does change in most countries quite frequently. And that's why I think most emerging markets, as they're now coming into becoming richer and they're starting to buy cars, not quite the level of Western countries, but certainly getting a lot more cars than they did before, it is having a bigger impact. And as they start spending on more goods, and those goods have to be transported, it has an even bigger impact. And as I said, a lot of the goods prices will probably also rise along with the oil price, especially in countries that are landlocked.
What implications and consequences will higher fuel prices have on these emerging economies?
I think just as we're starting to see world growth pick up a bit, these higher prices are going to play a negative role on that, and I suspect that we'll see a downgrading of some of the emerging market countries' growth prospects, particularly I think India, some African countries, also probably areas that are landlocked will see the biggest, as I said, the biggest problem with that. But I think that's where it's going to hit the pawpaw is going to hit the fan, so to speak, we're going to see a problem with the actual consumer spend in many of these countries, because it's going to come on the consumer side where prices rise because of the transportation, because of the price effect and the indirect price effect. And then on top of that, I think the psychological barrier here in South Africa, where we're breaking 13 Rand a litre, which is still, about 10% higher than the Indian prices, for example. We're likely to see this emerge as well in countries like Nigeria, which just cannot subsidize these high oil prices from their meager state resources anymore. So I think many emerging markets are going to see a bit of a slowdown for the next month or two in consumer spend, and that will have an impact on the rest of the world economy, because it's not just going to be a one place where it's going to impact. And then, on top of that, we know it will have, albeit smaller, an impact in the developed countries.
And Moody's rating agency recently commented, although India's fiscal consolidation efforts unveiled in the federal budget are positive for its credit rating, it will be challenging to achieve. Do you think this is true?
Well, India's just recently had its budget, and certainly they have also got a huge budget deficit problem to deal with. And I think very much in line with where they have been using subsidies to keep transportation fuels down, it seems they've drawn a line in the sand, and we'll see how they can hold out against the opposition parties who are blaming the Indian government partly for the price rise of fuel. And that obviously could make that they actually end up putting money aside again for fuel subsidies, or larger amounts available for fuel subsidies, which again could put the strain on their fiscal consolidation, which they need to do because they have been running, like other emerging countries, a rather large budget deficit.
Thanks for joining me, Mike. That's all for now, but stay tuned to Dukascopy TV for the latest financial news and updates throughout the trading week. For now though, goodbye.